Nothing in life is worthwhile unless you take risks. Nothing. Nelson Mandela said, "There is no passion to be found playing small and settling for a life that's less than the one you're capable of living." Now, I'm sure in your experiences in school and applying to college and picking your major and deciding what you want to do with life, I'm sure people have told you to make sure you have something to fall back on. Make sure you got something to fall back on, honey. But I never understood that concept, having something to fall back on. If I'm going to fall, I don't want to fall back on anything. Fall forward. This is what I mean.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Deadline. I'm your host, Poochie Hill. Poochie Hill. I'm here with some distinguished guests from around the Essex County and the state of New Jersey high school athletic departments. We have educators, we have administrators, and we have coaches here that will try to explain to you the importance of the Super Football Conference of Essex County and basically what we're trying to do about shaping minds, protecting hearts, and brotherhood through athletics and scholastics. I'm here today with Joe Pyro from Nutley High School, Ron Anelio from Mount Clair, and John Faraccio, close I think. Joe Faraccio from Memorial High School. First of all, to you big guys, my brothers, I would like to say thank you for coming again publicly. We're going to jump right into this here and speak of what the SFC is all about, and speak of your travels of why you still do what you do and what it did for you when you were a student and then when you became a teacher and then you took it further and became a coach and now an administrator to make sure that they receive all the gratuities that they can possibly have at this stage in their life to propel them forward. We'll start with the big guy. I call him Joe Pa.
Well, first, Poochie, I want to thank you for bringing us on the show. I'm a long-time watcher, first-time guest. You know what I mean? It's a big honor to be here. It's always a pleasure to sit down and talk with you because we do keep it real.
Yes,
we keep it real, and we're talking. So I'll never give up an opportunity to talk about football.
Yes, sir.
So the SFC, Super Football Conference, the largest football conference, high school football conference in the country. We have 114 member schools. We encompass, I want to say, Essex, Hudson, Bergen, Passaic, Morris, Sussex, and Warren counties. I mean that's everything north of exit 140 or 142.
South Jersey.
You know what I mean, all the way up to High Point. So it's the entire part of northern New Jersey. It got started, and to be quite honest with you, I was sat on the public non-public committee, the first public non-public committee with the NJSIA, and we were trying to figure out a way to balance out the lack of parity with public and non-publics when it came to football. You had your Big Five, Joe's, Bosco, Bergen, St. Peter's, Seton Hall now is in the game, where they were just running away, crushing the non-public schools, and it was a lot of competitive imbalance. So on the NJSA level, we kicked it around, and our main goal at that point, the committee's main goal, was like, well, just put all non-publics in our own division across the state of New Jersey, and they weren't convinced that we can do it, and I said we can do it. Rich Hansen and I said we can do it. We went back, going over all the numbers. I was on my dining room table. I had 3 laptops and my girlfriend at the time running numbers and that. What I realized was there was just as much imbalance from non-public to public, from public to public, than there was non-public to public.
Really?
You had schools like Old Japan beating Fairlawn 67 to 6. And there was a lot of those games within the divisions we had. I called Dennis Nelson, who was the president of Big North. I said, Dennis, I think if we combined these 3 or 4 conferences and formed one big conference, we could set divisions up based on strength of program, geographic location. We can put the non-publics in their own division and still provide them with a fair and equitable schedule. And we can come up with something here that's going to create parity across the board. Because as Ron used to say back in those early meetings, back when we're 2016, 17 we started, so we're 9 years into it, or 8 years into this, also about. 8 years ago, football was dying. Numbers were low. The concussion issues were in the forefront. Moms weren't letting their little boys play football because they were nervous, they were scared. Some programs that were not very successful had very, very low numbers. Well, by creating this parity and this level playing field, all of a sudden now you see numbers start to grow because they're playing in competitive games.
Well, mostly you had a difference in size. The main thing I want to say, get right back to what you were speaking of, is that if you're being demolished, as you all have stated, it's no competitiveness because it's basically bully ball now, and that's not the lesson of football.
Exactly, and that's some of the things that we've addressed directly. We're the only conference in the country, I believe, that has what we call an Ivy division, which is that division. I think there's 12 schools in it that are programs that are struggling, meaning they're struggling to survive. So we take the 12 programs that are all in the exact same boat, and we let them play each other. And now you're getting competitive games. So what happens? A team that had, 0-18, nobody wanted to go out for a team. Well, now you're playing games that are winnable games, and maybe you win 3 or 4 games. Maybe next year you win 5 or 6 games. Now there's a buzz in the building. Now kids want to come out for football.
True.
And then eventually they get integrated back into the schedule. We have the ability to do that because we have 114 schools.
That's a lot of teams.
Right. And that's not even the best part. We're just scratching the surface here, Pooch. As John and I and Ron, as we're looking at it, and again, this is not, there's Dennis Nelson, Richie Hansen, Ronnie Sanfilippo, Anthony, there's 20 to 25 guys that are involved in this.
Mr. Flippo has been around a long time.
Listen.
Long time.
Ronnie Sanfilippo is the Yoda of athletic directors.
Yes.
You understand what I'm
Yes.
saying? Like that's it. He's the guy. But at any rate, well, then we start to realize that we got a tiger by the tail here. 114 schools. We're the largest in the country. All of a sudden now we can cooperative buying, marketing, licensing, advertising, all stuff that we could do to generate buzz.
Same thing they're doing in college.
Exactly.
Exact same thing they're doing in
Exactly,
college.
and we can do that. And everything that we do, and our sponsorship money that we generate, and our the marketing stuff that we do, it all goes back to the kids, the schools, and the communities.
Let me ask you all this. Now, I'm a product of the New York City League, which was the only in the country too. How does that come into play with the SFC? Because they are a part of this too.
Yes, they are.
Now, can you explain for the audience, for those that are novice to understanding that the New York City League is no more, that there's the SFC that is taking over? Can you explain that a little bit for them? Simple?
So the New York City League actually, I think, they piggybacked on that lawsuit back in the 80s when the non-publics were fighting to get into the NJSAA tournament.
Because you had to come out of the city.
In order to get the PowerPoints.
Yes.
Correct. So now with them integrated into our SFC, they're broken up by group size. So your Shabazz and your Centrals, they're playing other Group 1 schools that are comparative of both size and ability.
I think that's great to a degree, because we're going to say this. You can have a Group 1 school that have phenomenal athletes and students, but they don't have the eye candy of a Group 4 school. The size, the numbers, the enrollment. That's very important. What you all have brought out is that the enrollment kind of dictated who was the big bully on the yard. Whereas now, it's more plain, whereas you might play a Group 3 if you're a Group 1, depending on how high you go in the ratings as far as playoffs and things like that there. That's when they happen to come across each other, because you're playing the best of the best. that's in your conference, correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
And with the Newark schools in particular, some of our Hudson County schools as well, it gives them it gives the suburban kids an opportunity
Play the urban.
to get into the city environment, and it gives the urban kids the opportunity to get into the suburban environment.
Which
There's a
you
lot of
need-
diversity.
Which
There's
you
a-
need to see, because
There's a lot of diversity.
there is speaking of, and there has always been speakings of, and I have to say this here, that from a suburban perspective or residential perspective, there's a much more close proximity of I wouldn't say a family structure, but we would say from a monetary aspect that it's more cohesive, more close-knitted. It's not as fast. Whereas in an urban setting, it's a little more diverse, it's a little more chaotic, and it's most definitely faster. It's most definitely faster because where you're from, John, Hudson County itself has always had its own little nook. When you played Hudson County, there is a energy level of competition the same as urban, or should I say urban to suburban. Whereas Jersey City feels they didn't get really a piece of the cake because they're in between the urban and the Empire State. You like that?
So basically, with our numbers being 114, gives us a lot more scheduling flexibility. However, within our schedule, we try to keep traditional rivalries, traditional games, towns that like to play each other,
Like the Thanksgiving games.
like Thanksgiving games, Nutley Belleville, Montclair Bloomfield.
Weequahic Shabazz.
Yeah, so those are games that we feel are extremely important, that we need to keep those going.
And why are they important?
Community involvement and community feel and everything that goes along with tradition and everything that's brought into football. There's nothing. I'm a fan personally. A lot of my AD brethren don't believe in it, but I'm a big fan of Thanksgiving football. And there's nothing like a Thanksgiving Day Weequahic Shabazz.
What is so important about, now this is a funny question, about football and Thanksgiving turkey? Do you all know the answer? Because I do. You go to sleep after you eat the big meal. You eat the big meal, you wake up, oh, we lost, oh, we won. That's it.
And one thing that we've noticed too, with our scheduling and going across borders, like Hudson County going to Bergen County and even out to Morrison, Sussex, and Warren, there's some rivalries and teams that like to play games that you would never think would like to play games with each other. So when we send out our schedule requests, the first game that always comes back is Lincoln High School in Jersey City against Westwood High School in
Really?
Bergen County. They request to play each other because they've played each other 3 or 4 years in the Super Football Conference, and it's a matchup that they both enjoyed. Those places couldn't be any more opposite, yet they request to play each other.
Really?
So it's one of those unique things where have been rivalries that have come out of nowhere along with the traditional rivalries.
How does scrimmaging come into play with the SFC? With all of the teams, can you just scrimmage anyone that's in it?
Anybody
That's
you want.
something new too.
Anybody you want. Anybody you want.
Well, watch this. We're going to speak about the big old Montclair Mounties.
I was waiting for that, Pooch.
For tradition, they are phenomenal in Essex County. They've always had a rivalry with Newark City League, and you are a former product and Mountie. Notice how I said that. A former Mountie athlete. How was the rivalry back then?
Oh, the rivalries were tremendous. I mean, Montclair, Nutley. One of the most intimidating places that I played as a
Really?
high school athlete was Nutley High School. Going down into the
It's funny
oval.
that he says that because one of the most intimidating places I've ever played at was Woodman Field.
But, you got to go down the steps.
Yeah.
You got that bowl atmosphere. It's a fun place to play.
I love the fact I live in Glen Ridge, and I always, when I go to the ShopRite,